Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're going to talk about a therapy today that can help and has helped and continues every day, helping many people from teens to adults. Helps with therapy. It's a therapy that helps with traumas, especially when something is holding you back or you're getting triggered about something. Cranial sacral therapy is it in a nutshell. She knows more about it than I do. She is Deniz Oktay, and she offers psychotherapy, and she's back with us. Welcome. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Good to see you again.
You too. Yeah. So last time we got together, we talked about dance movement therapy
Mm-hmm.
and how impactful that is. Before we get into biodynamic cranial sacral therapy, am I saying that right?
That's it. Yep.
Woo, all right. If I didn't say it right, I probably need therapy from that point forward because I really tried. What does it help and who does it help? And we identified what traumas are last time we got together, but I feel we should dig back into that a little bit because when you say the word trauma, it conjures up certain images. Many times it's not what we might think.
Yeah. Well, of course, starting with trauma, right? If you can think about it, we talked last time about like a car accident, right? That's a one event trauma, which can
Sure.
then affect, of course, the physical body, and it can also affect the emotional system. And it can be, if it doesn't get resolved, then it can become something that lives in the body, and it becomes more of a traumatic experience that then is impacting the way that you orient to yourself and the world, right? So, but traumas are all kinds of things. They can be messaging. We talked last time about messaging that children receive sort of internalized from their family structures or their family cultures. It can be experiences in culture and society. It can also be like bullying can be a form of trauma. There's just a lot of ways that life invites traumatic experiences. Now, a lot of times we move through those experiences and we resolve them and we start to feel better, and they don't have a lasting impact on the way that we feel about ourselves or our relationships with others. However, some traumas develop what's, from a craniosacral therapy perspective, like a pattern in the body, right? So it kind of makes an impact the way you might have if you fall down and you hurt your ankle or something. While the ankle may heal, there may be an off, like a pushing off center, off the midline, right? And there's sort of like a potency that gets held in the body. So the ankle moves off to the right a little bit, then the knee has to counteract, then the hip, and it kind of creates this pattern in the body. So when you go in to use the craniosacral therapy work is a very gentle, subtle working with a person's physiology. You're working in a biodynamic way. You're working with an energy field, and you're also working with the physical field. And you're allowing the body to unwind and kind of resolve those patterns which exist in the body and bring the body back to center, back to its midline.
I love the leg analogy because I also get pictures of, let's say somebody had that injury to an ankle or whatever, and they're going to walk differently, potentially forever because of the injury, unless there's therapy. Or we hear these things called triggers. Let's say that person fell outside, and happened to my sister. She fell and broke her ankle in a rut in a parking lot. So if somebody's walking, and we're just using this as an analogy to illustrate triggers and traumas and things like that, but you could be walking in a parking lot again. Every time you walked outside, that's your trigger. So now you're going to walk differently. Think about that in terms of the mind. You went through a situation, and now car accident. Every time you get in the car, that could be your trauma. But the trauma could be also something assumingly insignificant, like something a parent said to you, or bullying, or whatever it might be, and then you still carry that with you. I'm hearing more and more, Denise, how these traumas go to the cellular level in our bodies. It's not just, up here, I got a little something going on because of something happened in the past. It goes deep. We carry it throughout our entire body. We don't even realize it, right?
Yeah, we do. And, I like to think of the way I'm working from a body up, bottom up uh, structure as opposed to top down, right?
How do you mean that?
So I mean that, like exactly what you're saying, like the memories live in the body. And of course, the mind is connected to the body. We have thoughts and we have feelings. And however, if you're like thinking about the cellular structure and the messaging that comes from the bottom of the body, from like, let's say our gut up to the brain, most of the messaging is coming from the bottom of our body, from our body up to our brain. So if we have an injury, or let's say sometimes trauma involves shock, right? You kind of like takes your breath away. Now, you may resolve the initial shock, you may come back to your breath, but there may be something that gets held right around the diaphragm that just very subtly impacts the way that you breathe for years. It can happen for weeks, for months, for years, right? A kind of holding around this memory that isn't processed. And so the messaging, the way in which that can impact the nervous system, anxiety, and it can affect chemicals because the organs, of course, are producing chemicals and sending messages up through the spinal cord to the brain, and then the brain's coming back and telling the body what to do with it. So if the messaging system is off between the body and the mind, it can really create havoc in the body. So that's what I mean. So
Wow.
kind of working from the bottom up. Yeah.
It's almost scary. I mean, like seriously, when you think about the breathing thing, breathing is so natural, but obviously so important. And now you could have something that compromises you a little bit, just, I don't want to say just, but from a trauma that took place years ago.
It can. I think the good thing is that the body's very wise, and the body is always, I think, working in our favor in order to try to protect us. So it's going to do what it has to function as healthily as it can.
Yep.
If that means like something else needs to adjust, right, in order to make room for the diaphragm or whatever the issue is in the body in order for you to function. And then hopefully when there's a condition that's created that's safe enough with the right practitioner in the right situation where your body says, oh, now I'm ready to deal with this. Now I'm ready to like kind of like come back. And it can be, I mean, I think that's the beauty of therapy, right? It's kind of like right time, right place, right person, right condition, right? If you're not ready yet, you're not ready. It's okay. Some people are never ready. That's
Yep.
fine. And it doesn't mean that you don't function. I don't mean to make it seem scary, but I think it's just what lives in the body is, I think the more that we create that space for us to start to pay attention, we can just live more fully.
100%. And just like they say, you might meet the love of your life, right place, right time, all of that, all the pieces were there. Same thing when it comes to therapy. You may be ready, but you might not meet somebody that you align with in terms of, providing that therapy. You'll never know until you take a chance to find out. But it's also, I believe, I've experienced it myself, when the student is ready, the teacher shows up, and then the process begins. And it really did happen for me 3 years ago. Everything we're talking about here, that's what happened. And it's not like I shunned away from metaphysical and life coaches and psychotherapy and all of that. Just never thought I needed it. Guess what? My opinion, we all need it.
I know.
We all have gone through stuff, large and small, that has impacted our lives, held us back. You couldn't, again, you got bullied on the playground a couple of times. That's holding you back. Potentially. Depends on the child you were, the adult you are now. Do you believe that we're often sitting in what they call the child chair? even as adults?
Yeah, I like to think, you know, that book, the pigeon that drives the bus, or the pigeon driving the bus. Anyway, it's about like a
Mhm.
pigeon that's driving the school bus instead of the adult.
Uh-huh.
And that's where my mind goes when you say
Sure.
that, because I think sometimes our little self, our younger self, is sometimes in the driver's seat and we are completely unaware of it. Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, who's driving the bus? You know, like,
Seriously.
is it your wounded 5-year-old self who's in the driver's seat? You know, it's like time to ask the 5-year-old to take a seat at the back and let the adult self come forward. But that
Yeah.
takes, you know, work and awareness to kind of realize that.
There's a country song came out, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago called Jesus Take the Wheel. I'm not going religion here, but it's like Junior take the wheel. Junior took the wheel. You're Junior. You don't even know you're driving. The child in you is driving your entire life. What do we mean by that? Well, let's look at somebody that got bullied on a playground. Now you're an adult. Now you have confidence issues. Now you have self-esteem issues because it's been embedded in you. This perfect little 6-year-old, 7-year-old, whatever it might be, so impressionable, open to hearing anything. And that's how the mind got shaped at that time. And it happens. You know, kids bully each other. It's life. But some kids, it has an impact on them. And now that's the imprint. And that part of your childhood is driving your adult life. Wow. It's it's kind of sad and kind of scary at the same time.
Yeah, I think also we have different personalities, different character structures. So some of it's
True.
innate, some of it's how we have certain tendencies, right? So I think that some people just tend to be more like introverted or more quiet or more
Hmm.
take things in, and
Hmm.
other people tend to be more expressive. So I think that it's just such a contextual issue, kind of like the event that happens, when it happens, how long it happens, and then what are the conditions around it afterwards? Does anyone know that this happened to you? Do you get to talk about it? Do you get to become aware of like the way in which that might make you more fearful of people? Or there's something called transference, right? Where we transfer our feelings about someone, an adult, or a situation onto other people. For example, like with an authority figure. I'll give you an example, personal example.
Hmm.
So when I started working in the field as a dance therapist, I had a lot of transference around my parents and their authority, right? I kind of like always saw people who were more experienced or more older than me as having more authority than me. Even though I was coming in with my own expertise, I had a master's degree, you know, I was like, you know, got hired for
Sure.
the job, but
Sure.
I'm sitting at the table and sort of being like, feeling like that little girl, you know, and feeling like I'm transferring onto the head of the head doctor at the table, the feeling that they must be more in authority than me. And that it took me a while to kind of like gain my confidence, or gain my voice at the table. But
Thanks for
had
sharing
to
that.
see. Yeah, I
I,
hope that's clear
pff,
example. Yeah.
I'm so crystal clear, and I see it. You know, and it has nothing to do with your parents and their style or anything like that. It's how we also take it on. Because if you were a different child or I was a different child, yes, I got bullied on the playground. I could have been, Jimmy over here. And in fact, I'm rolled right off of him, no problem. That made an
Mhm.
impact on me. And same for you. I could have been you in that situation and would not even, have that authority vibe. Um, but I think I'm just like you. I would think the same thing. I would, and it's also, you want to give respect, but at the same time, doesn't mean you're not the smartest person in the room. We all have different things we bring to literally, in this case, the table. Um, when it comes to craniosacral therapy, what's going on there? How does it work? How does it make change?
Yeah. Well, craniosacral therapy refers to the spinal fluid that's moving up and down the spine, from the base of the head down the spine into the sacrum and then back up again. And this is happening all the time, whether you're aware of it or not. It's called primary process from a craniosacral therapy perspective. And that fluid has a lot of healing potential in the body. So as a craniosacral therapist, I'm really working to tune in and kind of listen to what is the quality of that movement, to really kind of palpitate and have a sensitivity to, does it get stuck along the way? Where does it get stuck? Does it get stuck around the shoulders? Does it get stuck around the hips? Does it get stuck down at the feet? Kind of like trying to understand how the body is responding and where is the health, and starting from the health in the body, I think is really important too. Like not looking for the problem and not looking for the dis-ease, but looking for where there's health in the body. And then going from there, I think as a psychotherapist, I'm really using craniosacral therapy in a very integrated way with the psychotherapy. Each practitioner is going to, approach and use the modality differently according to what their interest is or their expertise. Some people are very focused on like TMJ and working on like if there's tightness in the jaw and having real expertise around how to work with the cranial bones and nerves that are in the jaw and neck and thoracic area and working on that. For me, I'm kind of integrating it kind of like what we were talking about in terms of like, how does this how does your physiology also connect to your emotions and maybe some of your thinking and some of the maybe symptoms that you're dealing with, whether it's like increased stress or anxiety or just not being able to cope with life or feeling hopeless or depressed. These things can sort of be worked out in the body.
How do you know what's going on with that fluid?
Yeah, it takes a lot of practice. I mean, I'm still, always going to trainings and always learning and always practicing because it's such a deep, subtle kind of palpitation and sensing in and paying attention to. But of course, that's what the training is. That's what you learn, how to pay attention to that. What's like, for example, are you working more in the fluids? Are you drawn more into like the fluid system of the body, the way that the fluids, because we're so much fluid movement, or am I being more drawn into the tissues, more into like a bony structure, right? Like what's happening, or is it more organ, or maybe the fascia system, the connective tissue that connects all around the muscles and bones?
Are you physically is it through touch that that's how you do it?
Yeah, it's through a
Oh,
very gentle therapeutic touch. Yeah, it's
I
kind
didn't
of,
know.
I know. It's like when I discovered it, I was like mind blown. I was like, what is happening right now? I went in for like an introductory week long, just sort of training to get introduced to it.
Wow.
And it was like my mind was blown. I experienced it. I got on the table and had some people work on me, and I just came out feeling like, whoa, like
So
did not even know this existed.
I don't know if this is in the zone, but December, I had myofascial release,
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
and I was having some just like weird feelings here and there and just tightness and all. And I've had like little minor surgeries for basal cell skin cancer. So, it's my understanding that, if you've had surgery, there can be stuff from scarring underneath here and there, whatever. And just in general. So it was a therapy where it kind of like pushes fluid out to kind of drain it. Is that kind of in the same zone of what you do?
It's definitely related in that the craniosacral therapy does work with that fascial system and it does help release. It's just a different kind of way in,
Gotcha.
right? So yeah,
Mm,
it's I love the craniosacral therapy because it really trusts each person's body to work to show me as the practitioner where to go. Right. And so like, even though somewhat, well, that's a very specific situation you had, right? Of course. But sometimes like you have a shoulder pain, you're not quite sure what it is. And then you get on the table and you start working and it's like, well, yeah, the shoulder's pulling, but well, what's happening over here in the rib cage? Let's come down and work a little further down. And then that releases the shoulder, right? Because the initiation is actually further down or somewhere else in the body. So sometimes it can be surprising the way that the interconnectedness of everything in the body, right?
And is it a fluid situation? And when I say fluid, some may think, I mean movement, but I'm literally talking a fluid from the fluid that we're talking about in our bodies. Would it be that, let's say somebody has a shoulder issue, but it's actually connected to the rib cage? Would that be the fluid?
It's going to affect the path of the fluid. So like the body is always in movement. So it's either like opening and widening or closing and contracting, right? Now, if you have a tension, or let's say something's happening in the rib cage, the right side doesn't fully open, it stops, right? So that's affecting the way in which the fluids can move through the body. So in that way, it's affecting it. The tissues might be, or the strain of the muscles might be affecting the flow of the fluid.
I had no idea that this is what cranial sacral therapy is. I believe that we should even go back to the beginning and explain what's going on. There is such a network of fluid and all of that many of us don't even realize it.
Yeah. I mean, of course, unless you're like, I think, very interested in the anatomy. And this is a very specific, this comes out of an osteopathic tradition.
Sure.
The craniosacral therapy. So the bioenergetic piece brings in also the energy body, right? So there's it's working with all different layers between the energy body, the fluid body, the structural, bones body.
I'm liking this even more.
Yeah, I love
Like,
energy work. I
seriously, but now you're combining it in this instance, the energy work with the physical work.
Yeah.
Not to say that there's anything wrong with just energy work. Let's say somebody's doing Reiki. Yeah, fantastic. I had a session 2 weeks ago. Whoa. And it was virtual. And I went to bed that night. I had it done. She got done about 9 o'clock. I went to bed like 10 something. The dreams I had, the clarity I had. But anyway, digression. This is like the best of both worlds going on here.
That's why I love it, because it's really grounded in the anatomy and it's grounded in the physical structure,
Sure.
but it's also very connected. What's happening in the energy body is very related to what's happening in the physical body.
Wow.
So bringing in that wider field allows for, I like to think of it like more space for the body to kind of like work things out. And some things it can help move things along in the healing process to involve the energy body, but also staying very rooted in the structure and the anatomy.
And this is something obviously, I'm guessing here, that can't be done virtually because you're physically touching and feeling and moving.
Craniosacral therapy, yeah. I mean, there are practitioners who have found very innovative ways. I've received distance sessions with two craniosacral therapists that I know and trust. But I wouldn't label it craniosacral therapy, I think, because it does require having your hands on a person in order for it to be considered craniosacral therapy.
What you do is the blend between two. What you described seconds ago, it looks like it's more on the energy side than the actual, physical side. Just about out of time. Final question. Curious. Is this at all connected to the lymphatic system?
Of course. I mean, the whole, it's all interconnected. But there's something called lymphatic drainage massage.
Yes.
Which very specifically goes in and works to drain the lymphatic system. So the craniosacral therapy work can help bring space and fluidity and movement and health, but it's not specifically working with the lymphatic system in that way.
Gotcha. But everything is kind of connected. And in my journey, research, studying all of this, the lymphatic system is such misunderstood, and just not a lot of information out there, even in the medical world. Like I met somebody who has written books about it, and she had no way to find current photos. You would think in today's world technology, she's actually using photos. It's hard to believe this, from like the 1800s and drawings from back, even before that. And they are so detailed and so on point. We don't have that. If you Google it, you don't find a lot. It's like blows my mind. But super
Well, it's good to
interesting.
talk about it here. So
yeah. Well, that's spreading awareness that this exists. You're in Brooklyn, New York, and available for sessions. How do we find you?
Williamsburg, bodymindtherapy.com. Also my email, I don't know if I should spell it out, Deniz Deniz at DenizOktaySSP.com. Probably better to just go to my website. WilliamsburgBodyMindTherapy.com. Yeah.
Trying that email is me doing craniosacral therapy. It'd be kind of the same thing. Fascinating talking about this, Deniz. It's just like so interesting and helps so much with the stuff that we're going through. And of course, you do the dance therapy as well. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
We'll talk soon.
Okay.
We'll
Bye.
be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.